So I appreciated the Parliamentary Secretary's comments in that regard. And I was most impressed with the remarks of my colleague from Rivière des Mille-Îles. And I will quote, and he was referring to our peacekeepers. First, they are a key component of multilateralism, a conflict resolution principle very dear to the hearts of Quebecers. UN peacekeeping missions represent an impartial and very widely accepted way to share the burden and to act effectively. In fact, I recommend all these speeches to my colleagues in their complete version. I'm only able to quote a little bit. My colleague from Victoria, who spent time, I believe, in the military. If I didn't, yes, she did. And I quote from her speech: "We cannot stress enough the importance of the work of those who serve in the armed forces, who put themselves in harm's way for Canada. There is no word to describe the magnitude of their sacrifice, nor my feeling," and I think we share that with her, our feeling gratitude, which all Canadians share. And I go on to my colleague from West Nova, who is fortunate to have in his riding the Pearson Peacekeeping Centre. And he spoke eloquently in support of this bill. And I quote from his remarks: "Peacekeeping is a dynamic concept that responds to changes in the international environment in order to create security for those affected by conflict. Traditionally, peacekeeping took place between two states in order to monitor a peace treaty upon which all parties had agreed. These early missions were traditionally military in nature." And he makes a very important point here, and a point that I wish to expand on. "The role of peacekeeping has expanded to include the delivery of humanitarian aid, supervision of elections, repatriation of refugees, disarming of war factions, and the clearing of landmines." And I point out to my colleagues that the bill contains in clause in the whereas section, we specifically include, along with members of Canadian forces, we include the police services, diplomats, and civilians. Yes, we're recognizing on August 9th the loss of 9 soldiers in 1974 in the Middle East, because the beginning of this was focused on military. And I mentioned we are evolving. And now we engage Canadians in a broad range of professions and skill sets to assist, whether they're members of the NGO community, whether they're municipal policemen from a city, pick a city, or a policeman who volunteered to go and help, whether they are ambulance workers or first aid workers, any Canadian, military or not, that is supporting Canada's efforts to bring peace, to keep peace, to make peace, is a peacekeeper. I deliberately, in this bill, did not define a peacekeeper, Mr. Speaker, because each person who thinks about these things can define peacekeeper in his or own unique way. It is comprehensive, and that actually is what the Dominion Canada Legion, their view. They have an expanded view of peacekeeper, and I laud them for that. Somebody else might have a restricted view of peacekeeper. Doesn't matter. As long as what we're recognizing is the spirit of what peacekeeping is all about. So I invite this place from time to time, whenever we have debates on military matters and peace matters, and I invite Canadians every August 9th in particular to take a few moments to reflect on our legacy and where we're going as a nation of peacekeepers. I mean, imagine being called peacekeepers. It's not the same thing as avoiding conflict. You know, I would include in peacekeeping the need to be strong, to root out the enemy where necessary. It isn't simply sitting back all the time and letting local combatants fight things out. Each situation requires its own solution. So I think it's important that we don't limit ourselves by a specific definition. And I want to underline too that this is not about what we're doing in Afghanistan whatsoever. I mean, that's a whole separate debate. And I went to a rally on November 2nd in my riding, a Support the Troops rally, and I was glad to be there. And I'm sure many of my colleagues were at rallies in their ridings. And It was a non-political event. It didn't matter if you were there and wanted to be in Afghanistan for years, or whether, like so many of us, want to come out of combat role in February 2009, or whether they wanted to come out of Afghanistan tomorrow. That is not the debate. When you support your troops, you support your troops. They are doing a job for us. They are there with a mandate, and you know what? While they're there in our name, we support them. So I want to actually pay tribute to Sandy Finnemore and Bob Tardif of Elliott Lake, who sponsored that rally, and commend them for the excellent work that they did. So, and I want to point out that this bill at report stage had a few very minor amendments. I mentioned it was made very clear that in Quebec, les casques bleus is the standard terminology for a peacekeeper. So we made sure that there's no misunderstanding between gardien de la paix and casque bleu. We make it very clear that this is not a holiday. It's simply, some might say, it's not a day of heritage. It's a day of recognition, a recognition, of commemoration, a day to take time to understand what our peacekeepers throughout history, in the present and in the future, will do. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you for your indulgence. I look forward and I hope the Chamber will continue its support of this bill when it comes to a final vote, I hope in the not-too-distant future. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments? The Honourable